So we have a couple of different things that we want to do, 4 of them to be exact. We want to reflect on your October cohort experience. That's going to be super important to sort of moving forward with the November experience. We're going to check in on each one of your cohort's progress based upon what we said we were going to do last time around. We're going to use the website to sort of explore what other folks have been up to and how they're sort of organizing, and then planning for November. At that point, you are allowed to like plan on your own, or obviously if you're looking to plan with your other member, you may have to find some other time to do that to make sure that you're ready to go for November. So, any questions about those outcomes? Feels okay. You're right. Great. All right. So we are going to do some reflection, and I'm going to do it on sticky notes if that's okay.
November cohort. What was the end of the?
Oh, sorry. NOV cohort prep. Okay. All right. And my favorite thing to write on sticky notes with are vis-a-vis, but if you would rather do a pen or pencil, that is totally okay. Okay. I don't know. I had this obsession with vis-a-vis when I started teaching because of the overheads, and then like anytime I see them, I'm like, oh. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that, right? So the activity that we're going to do is what I call one person, one move, and one change. All right? So on the first sticky note, you need to write the one person that either impacted you during October or that you had a direct impact on. So the person, or if you want to go multiple people, that's okay, but one person, and we'll talk about that after you think about it. And now it may be a little while ago, so you're going to have to really rack your brain to think back to what the October session was, but we were over in the PLCC in your rooms again, where we were sort of sharing and continuing to think about essential questions. But one person that either directly impacted you or that you had a direct impact on, and what that impact was. Let's take a moment. And if you want to draw a picture of them, that's okay too.
Is that Janet?
All right. Who do you got, John?
Janet. And what's her last name? Snyder, right. Principal at Virginia Court. And in our Cultures of Thinking cohort, she just joined in October. And so it put kind of the impact on me was a little bit affirming in the work that we're doing.
How so?
Being that I think she's been, from my experiences with her, like at Community S, reciprocal agreement roundtables and things,
yes,
hasn't always been the most positive advocate maybe of the work and the kind of thinking that we're trying to promote in Cultures of Thinking. And so the fact that she made a conscious decision to join our group, knowing that she's got a pilot team member at her school,
yeah,
to me was affirming that, you know, when we set out to do this work, we talked about there's going to be early adopters, but that's not really where the real work lies. It's in the variety of teachers, administrators taking on the learning and being able to move forward. And so seeing people making a conscious decision to come join us in our cohort, to me, was pretty powerful.
Nice.
And exciting. So if anything, it opens another opportunity.
Yeah.
So
I like that a lot. What about you?
So, true confessions, I actually wasn't here for the implementation of this day, but
Yep.
so my note is more about, we did some planning pre-work before.
Mhm.
So the person who I think had the most impact on me during that time was Mary Duran, who's the principal at Park Lane.
that was my other one.
Yeah.
I was debating between the two.
And I think the reason, one, she was volunteered to be a part of that work, to be a part of the planning before the cohort time at the school leaders meeting, which I think was a commitment. Principals are so busy, so for her to put that out there. But she's also continued to offer up her classes and her teachers as a place to come and observe and see it in action. And since I'm the coordinator who supports their building, I've actually seen it in action already alongside her and her teaching partner. So I feel like it's impacted me because I've already seen it take hold at her building in action. So it's, I guess, maybe another sort of testament to the work. And,
Totally.
so,
Yeah, and so I love the idea that people are choosing to come. People are open to sort of observing and bringing folks into their school.
Yeah.
Jim, we're just talking about one person that either impacted us in October in the cohort session or that we impacted.
Okay.
And so on that little sticky note, if you'd like,
All right.
take a moment to do that.
I
Yeah.
made a good guess. That's what I thought you meant.
Want to go next?
Sure. I joined Shelley and Maureen with the early learning cohort because some of the other work we're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wrote down Ramon from Wheeling. Our group is somewhat small. I think there's 7 people. And so
Great
the majority
size.
the majority of our time kind of spent swirling around current state resources out there. Just where does the cohort want to go? Kind of we tried to find our outcomes and where we wanted to land, and that was interesting. And finally, he's like, take us somewhere that you would say is demonstrating proficiency, or it has
Physically.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we kind of put out there that we're going to be with you, but we're not necessarily going to be leading it.
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
how should we roll with that? And so he kind of said, before I want to connect this to my own teachers or my own building, I want to see if I'm understanding what you're talking about when we think about best practice. So this is kind of a nice way to land us in a direction, and I think it'll be great to actually go and see instruction and talk about it together.
And where are you going to go?
Paris, I think.
Okay.
And I missed the beginning of it. For what? What's your cohort?
The early learning.
Okay.
So
That's right.
P3, P2. You can see Linda Smith, I think.
Oh.
Cool. Can I join you guys?
Can I go?
Is your
Yeah.
Linda
And
Smith?
then but we also talked about people go and see her, and because
I
she's so
know.
amazing, they're like, I have no idea how to
I-
even enter into that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you'll have to fill it out. I've had that experience a little bit. It is for some folks, it's a big jump from where their current state is to where they might.
We did talk about that, how that could be seen as like a
Be a barrier.
yeah. It's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Ask
Yeah.
her to tone it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you be less good, please?
Well, because I think she was an art major too. So even her writing demonstrations, the way she'll even draw a picture of you lost me because my stick figures are nothing like what
Doesn't she?
I just locked you out. Sorry about that. Come on in. So, with you guys just coming in, we are doing sort of a reflection on October. So, if you can remember back that far, we are coming up with one person that either impacted us or that we had an impact on from the October cohort session.
We're gonna have to be spectators because
Okay.
Garrett was here. We weren't here.
Oh, that's okay. So you both would like to spectate and
For
make,
that, I'm not sure.
can you do a really good peanut gallery? Is that okay?
Definitely.
Right, great.
We can be like the old Muppet guys.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. All right.
All right. Bonnie Hargrove from Dalton, and I know between the two meetings, the first meeting was a tough one. We didn't really land on much for a while. We had exit criteria, and it was people were all over the board in terms of there were people who thought we were talking about exit tickets, which is very different, not what we were thinking. There were some people who just looked at it as a document. There were some people who said, I've never heard of this before, kind of all over the board. And so there was lots of ideas thrown out about where you might even want to learn, which is hard to do when you kind of haven't landed on what we're actually talking about. But Bonnie, I think she's a very good listener of just everybody and watcher. And she very quietly just said, so this is all tied to instruction, right? Because it is.
Right.
And also I think you should recognize that there's some just, we're heading off in some tangents here, and this isn't very helpful. But then at our second meeting, where we really did, we just kind of laid some things out there and said, no, this is really what we're talking about. It's not this and it's not this. People then landed on, I need to fell into a math and literacy topics kind of. I want to dig into math, I wanted to look at literacy. And not surprisingly, it landed in, we need to see instruction. You're right, this isn't about a document. This is actually about teaching. Then they took it back to, in one case, planning structures. I want to see what's effective planning that's getting to this. And again, Bonnie just stepped in and she's like, we'll do math. We're kind of playing around with math. It's kind of going all right. And she's like, Jim, can I get some help with that one? And he said, can we work together? But yeah, just kind of just come join. Let's just see math. Then there'll be a cohort that's joining Dalton to look at their planning structure and then also some teaching. And then Elkhart is going to be similar. Is going to be looking at literacy and I think the kind of same thing, planning and then teaching.
And so did you feel like it was an impact that you had on her or something that she really had on you?
She did for me. I'm talking about for her, on me, as the facilitator, is just her take on that and being able to kind of almost be she wasn't facilitating, but was so good about just reading, this is what my colleagues are asking for here. And this is,
and synthesizing.
I'm reading the crowd here, and I'm hearing some misunderstandings, and let's help to bring this back together. So, and then just put herself out there come to Dalton, see what we're doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really great. John, do you feel like you have had enough of a moment to think about a person?
Well, I guess it's probably Jen. So we're that planning for equitable learning experience is one. And so last week we kind of grounded ourselves in some reading. We read a couple of pieces. One, The Invisible Knapsack of White Privilege by Patricia McCormick. And we read another, and we had really great basically Socratic seminar.
Yep.
But now we're getting into okay, so now let's go into schools and everything. So Jen Martha, she's also co-facilitating it.
Yeah.
She's volunteering Lansing to be a place where we can go look at stuff. She brought some video we could use for this upcoming session.
So she's
getting us into school.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I like that idea of that these folks who are either facilitating or are participants are really having a direct impact on the whole cohort and the way in which it goes, and that people can come together. Mine was Ran Jung from APS Online, and she really just kept on bringing things back to we need to have more opportunities for kids, and talking about what they were struggling with most, and was just really vulnerable in that space. And so I was just very impressed, and kind of set the tone for a lot of these other folks. So if you're looking for these slides, you can either go to the Cohort website, or the link is bit.ly/NOV Cohort Prep, and you can find those. So the last thing that I want to do on reflection, and those of you who were not able to participate in the last cohort session, that's okay. But what I want you to think through is one move that you made that you are proud of in that session, and one change that you might like to make for next time around. And if you are, again, if you have not, or you were not there in October, you can either think back to September, or you can sort of project forward and think about moves you want to make, and changes you want to make to be successful in November. So take a moment if you'd like to sticky note it up. So one move and one change. And John, you already filled out the form, so you already have some of that information. But one move and one change.
I don't remember filling that out.
You did. I saw your name in there.
Wonderful. Can I see what I said?
It was powerful.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Why don't you repeat it?
You find it here, so the notes and stuff.
Just as five-star tabs.
Yes.
So if you. Oh, I see it. Here, go back. And click on there. Get your cohorts. And then I think you should be able to navigate to yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One change.
Yeah.
Just all of your. Yep. So you're like that. It's a little bit bigger.
Let's see.
Where is that?
Oh, maybe no, it's getting kicked down now.
Exactly.
They made a really great replacement.
Yeah. And then it'll give you, so you can actually see the document.
It worked.
But that's all of
That was
those,
the change
the
also.
notes and everything like that you can look at.
Change.
So one move and one change. Move you'd like to make, move you were proud of. You want to go first?
Sure.
All right. Go for it. What's a move or a change?
I just wrote for a move. I felt like I listened a lot and tried to revoice what I thought people were saying to kind of calibrate where the discussion was headed. And then one change or one thing I'm thinking about is how to better identify or know the role of the participants in light of their own learning. So
Say more about that. What does that mean to you?
I think it took us a while to land on where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do, and I think they are relying on us to provide specific learning every time.
Mhm.
So if the shift is more around them being the lead learner and owner of that, just thinking more about how to help shift that.
Nice. Yeah. We may start to brainstorm some ideas there, but I like that a lot. Yeah. What do you got?
Actually, in a similar vein, I think. So again, I wasn't there to help lead last time, but the time before, we asked principals to state what they needed in this experience or
Yeah.
what they wanted to take away. And I just want to really honor that. And so I don't think that there's any intentionality to not meet their needs, but I want to make sure that we really do truly meet them.
Yep.
So I think a move for this time is to ensure that we sort of calibrate where we are in meeting their needs of what they were hoping to take away from the learning.
Nice.
And then something, again, similar that's just always on my mind is how are we allowing for the principals to really own this learning and feel like they're directing it versus potentially being kind of guided by some work that we're really immersed in. And so how do we just really be thoughtful that we don't just like have our own agenda and drive, even subconsciously, which I've been known to do. So I'm trying not to do that.
I like that a lot. And sort of just constantly being reflective in that moment and saying, is this my outcome or is it
Exactly.
our outcome?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. John, what do you got?
Think of
You're on the same page?
I am on a similar page. So the first one, the move, I don't know that there was a really specific move that made this happen, but we started with this kind of build a card tower type challenge. And knowing that we had a pretty enthusiastic, fun group the first time. And again, I'll go back to the fact that we had a couple
folks choose.
New people in the group, and the way the activity kind of played out, it still went really well and brought out a little bit of competitiveness in people, and just even with a little different dynamic, it still played out really well. So I don't know that there was anything specific that happened that made that go that way, but it was a positive. It was good. So whatever it was, I'm going to do it again.
Another card.
Yeah, right.
Well, but you created that space, right? Like
Right,
you created that, whether that was the activity that you used as sort of the move, or you just let it happen, right? Like you did not
And I
over
would say it was
facilitate.
probably more the latter of just kind of letting it happen. And I found myself kind of my role in the cohort. Once, there's the planning time, but then when we get there, I found myself being more the observer and note taker and trying to make sure I capture those thoughts that they're bringing to the table, because one, it honors what they're saying, and it keeps me from talking too much.
Yep.
And so I actually put on here as far as change, there was one comment. We were deciding kind of what chapter in the book to start with. We've read the introduction that kind of goes through the 8 cultural forces.
Yep.
And so then the question is, what force do we focus on? And it was pretty overwhelming. The teachers wanted to focus on expectations. And there was a comment in particular that said, right now, direction of the district is kind of unclear to us. And so now looking back, I would want to seize that opportunity to instill some ownership in that. That's why, to some extent, we're doing this, because you are the direction we're going. Like, what you go back to your buildings and the movement we make and whatever we decide to do is the direction. Doesn't matter what we talk about or how into it we get, it's what ultimately experiences kids are getting that's the direction the district is going.
Nice.
So I think a comment like that is an opportunity for ownership.
Nice. I like that a lot. All right. I know you guys were not able to take part, but moves or changes?
I just got back to September. And I thought one thing that we did really well was making sure that everybody in our group was heard and that their ideas were represented in some fashion or form.
Yeah.
Because we were, using that to kind of move the direction of the group. So we wanted to make sure that we have a pretty big group, that everybody's ideas and voices were heard. And then a change based on that, and getting sort of a lay of the land of where everybody was, thinking more about how we're going to differentiate that, since there's 4 of us that are facilitating.
Right.
Like, there's a really good opportunity there to kind of make smaller groups, or how are we going to meet them where they are with project-based learning. And some of them are like implementing it at their school, some of them are just beginning to talk about it with their staff, like some of them are just in the investigative stage, so kind of looking at where everybody is and going from there.
Nice. Anything you'd add to that?
What Kristen said. No, it's the differentiation piece here, because I'm looking, because we weren't there, I'm looking at the notes and whatnot and seeing like, how do we...
There's a lot.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. A lot that they want to know.
Yeah. And so trying to figure out what those next moves are.
Yeah.
To support folks.
And yet not, I keep wanting to, I think, and I can speak a little bit for Garrett. Garrett and I both find ourselves kind of like going, okay, here's what we're going to do, you guys. And it's no, step back and let them.
Because that's, I think for a lot of us, that's the default.
It's that inquiry piece. It's like, okay, we're stuck here. Let me,
No, I like that a lot.
So that's something I got to, whether it's a change or whether it's a move, it's something I keep in the back of my head that We're just kind of facilitating in a very loose sense of the term.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I think about what, Jim, you were talking about, where you recognized that there was a moment of sort of a lack of clarity, and that you strove to sort of find some of the clarity, and then started to branch off. And that there are these moments where you recognize, okay, there's not enough clarity here to make decisions. How do we find a little bit more? And then how do we then look at differentiating and supporting folks within their own inquiry? So kind of deciding. So it's tougher to sort of know, not having obviously been there for this last one, but hopefully we'll have some time to explore. So.
We'll connect with Garrett. Garrett was there. So.
Good. All right, John, what do you got?
So, kind of like Will Pepper was saying, I kind of backed off a little bit. The group did a lot of talking around the readings that we did.
Nice.
So I was really happy with that. People seemed really engaged with it and really interested in the conversations and tying it back to their schools. So I thought that was helpful. But it did take longer than I anticipated, which, I mean, I guess is okay. But I think I just need to be more mindful about facilitating us forward and not getting stuck in a place for too long, using the entire time. It was pretty much what we did for this conversation.
And so it's finding that balance then too, right, of saying, okay, we have dug into the depths of this, let's move forward and sort of shift towards the next set of outcomes. Although, especially with equity, like those discussions can be super fruitful and valuable, and so trying to like not cut it off, right, and say, and now we're done talking about white privilege, or like,
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Move we made this time was, like we mentioned before, we in our a little bit of planning time that we had, we tried to come up with some possible predicting where people might be confused. We took it back to, like, you know, when you plan for any lesson, any learning experience, you have to have some sense of what might people understand or not understand, or just be heading off, and just taking time to clarify that. I was thinking back to, like, in math, I think we started off like, you're supposed to kind of guess what we're all heading at right here, and we're like, I'm not guessing, or I'm guessing completely wrong. And it's like, you know what, you thought we were learning about fractions, it's actually linear equations. Oh, that would have been nice to know. So we actually put more out there, and that was helpful. A change we want to think about is, and actually this will kind of naturally take place because we're now going off in visiting schools. Less just discussion of what people just think and bringing artifacts, evidence, which allows them to actually come up with genuine questions rather than just, here's a topic, talk about it with nothing really tangible, and then try to come up with a question you're interested in. Having something to actually talk about, maybe even something that didn't work, but something to look at or share or something, which then actually generates genuine questions rather than just, here's a great topic and what would you like to learn about it.
Yeah, and that speaks a lot to, sorry, did you have more?
Nope, that's
okay. So that speaks a lot to the kind of change that I want to make is we did have a lot of opinion and those kinds of things. The move that I thought was sort of strongest for our group is we did an activity where we thought about the next 5 years and what we would like to see. So it was not like just this one school year that we were planning for, but looking at sort of blended learning and Tequity in 5 years and like what we would hope to see. And so that actually got us out of just looking at this particular moment and looking sort of further out. But the change that I'd like to make is not just sort of staying in the theoretical and really looking at, and I think many of you have mentioned this, right? Like looking at what classroom practice looks like and talking about what does equity in the classroom look like from a technological lens. So those kinds of things for me were really valuable to sort of recognize, oh, we're doing good in this particular way, but there are changes that can be had here, and there are moments that we can sort of take advantage of. All right, the next thing that I want to do is sort of do a quick check-in with yourself on, and you guys already pulled up the site, but what I'd like you to do is, if you're on this slide, you can sort of click anywhere and it'll open up the Cohort site. And I'd like you to open up your page so your cohort page, and see, sort of check in with yourself, did we get everything done that we wanted to get done? And if not, what was it that didn't happen? So check in with yourself. And one thing that I would love to think about, some of us, worked really diligently inside of the provided Google Doc. Some of us worked in other spaces, and I want to make sure that all of those spaces are sort of transparent and shared on the site. But please take a moment and take a little bit of inventory of your own page, and then we'll come back with some thoughts.
Email from you, or I thought it was linked to today's.
It should be linked to today's presentation. Sorry about that.
If you go under the cohorts.
Yeah, just your regular browser. So if you do bit.ly/APS cohorts.
Okay.
Yep. And that should be the site. Yep. Pull up your page and then pop that out. So this one is the culture of thinking, and this was one that I had a question about. So if there was somewhere else that you were sort of capturing some of that information, that it exists somewhere, maybe we'll share that one instead. But I want to make sure that we can sort of go back to it and see.
So we have a whole folder.
Brilliant. Can we?
That has our agendas and then has our, some of these are just, I was transcribing in Google Keep, and then you hit the create a doc and it creates a doc. So this might be the better place.
So can we make that happen?
Up to that.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Here, I'll just share the folder with you.
So if you share the folder with me, and then we can put it in there so that it's not did you guys meet this month or?
Yeah, we were totally off on our own.
Yeah, we had our own.
Which is totally fine. I just wanted to make sure, and that's why we're checking in, right? So if I go into the Cultures of Thinking one, and then instead of sharing the template document, if there is a better way of doing that, so I'm going to trash that one.
So I just shared that folder with you.
Brilliant. Let me just go over her.
They're integrated? Why would you even connect them?
COT cohort.
Yeah. Right.
Boom. Professional learning resources. School leader cohort.
It's not. So when you create
Okay.
those things, rather than how do you?
What was that?
It was just a silly misspelling on somebody's name, and it just makes their last name really interesting now.
It's not like we were trying to figure out which teaching partners were in the frequency.
It's not an addition.
And I'd be like,
It's not PDL plus.
That was, why was that? I know.
Is there anything out there? So maybe that's.
All right. So now refresh. And you should. I'm just talking to these two folks. Not everybody has to refresh. And so you have, and there it is, the folder, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that looks good. And then you
other
can.
people will be happy to look at these, but some of them are
So use this as your.
less than organized. So some of the notes might not make as much sense if you weren't there, but it's still
Totally
resources
fine.
people can browse.
Right, totally fine, and it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of have it all in one spot, so that people can access it. I wanted to check in on yours as well.
I don't have anything in there.
Did you or Mark or anybody else sort of take notes from the? Mark is also
Mark is also
one of the
on
facilitators,
it,
right?
yeah.
And so
We'll get it in there. I'll make
Okay.
sure we get it updated.
yeah, and it's you know, for us, it really has to do with like, what is the best way to document and share? And if this isn't it, like, right, like taking pictures, that totally works too. But just having those sort of that common space to see what everybody is able to, or what everybody's doing, and in particular, like cohort members and which schools they're at, would be pretty important. So that top table was definitely something. And do you have a list of your cohort members somewhere in existence?
We can get it because it's shared with everybody, right?
Right.
Like I could get it. The folder is shared with the cohort members.
Oh, so the folder is shared with all of those people,
Yeah.
but you don't have like just a list
I
somewhere.
could write them. I can get them.
Yeah, okay.
I can add them to them.
Because that would be
Yeah,
good
yeah.
for just sort of seeing who's in and out of each
Right.
one of the cohorts.
Okay.
So that totally works. Awesome.
I'm trying to remember which of these.
That's what I'm wondering a little bit, is like,
Oh, that's right, because on the first day, Jocelyn just wrote it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That's where the list was.
That's how I
Okay.
remember it.
So
I should-
sometimes that works. Sometimes that's less good to just have the,
Yeah, we'll
the
get one
paper
added.
list. That's good.
We'll
That's
add it.
and if you just put it in the folder,
Super easy. Okay.
then we'll be able to sort of have that that running list.
So just add a folder with like members.
Or
Or
do you
just a
want it to
doc
go?
with because that one doc that we had for all of the
so.
that I took out had the sort of the table with names and like where they're at in the world, things like that.
What are 21st century
All right.
skills?
So, did everybody meet exactly all of their outcomes that they meant to make during the October session?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. As long as we don't have any
The rest of you
illusions
might, but
about
no, we did not. Right.
So looking at the notes, what do you feel like is still hanging out there for you, or do you not yet know and you need to talk with Garrett?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, one of our goals was like to get everyone's essential questions
Mhm.
around PBL, and
We did get that.
We
I guess
got
maybe
that.
we did, yeah.
And that was like our main goal.
Yep.
But now we have it, we're not sure what.
What to do
Yeah.
with it. Now.
Yep. Yep.
So I think we did. We accomplished our main goal.
Which was to find out there's a whole lot of inside
Is that
of
it?
project-based learning. So what is it that you want to know? And it can be anything like, how do you support teachers in this process? How do you integrate 21st century skills?
Yeah.
We had a whole list of questions. So now we know where people are and what they want to know about project-based learning. But I'm just kind of stuck as to
How do we facilitate
how do we
that?
begin to
and not
facilitate that.
Tell or yeah.
For me as a teacher, if they're my students, I'm all of a sudden going like, okay, well, here's the things you need to read, here's what you need to find out, let me tell you what you're going to do. So I'm trying
Not to do that.
not to do that.
But I do think that that's interesting to start with the question, right? So you have the essential question that, David wants to answer: is PBL supporting students in the acquisition of 21st century skills, right? And if that's the question, how do you sort of go about that? And I also like this column of wish list that was put in here. I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting, sort of almost like a how we get there.
Yep.
Wait. Okay. I think I said that incorrectly. And so how is it that you can support people in answering these questions?
Yeah.
That is the question. All right, so can we take a moment and brainstorm? So based upon the essential questions that your folks asked, or that you see up here on project-based learning, how would you help someone to answer this question? How do you facilitate an experience that helps someone to answer that question?
Well, the only thing that comes to my mind is maybe we can find examples.
That's like providing them with the resources and letting them kind of
Explore.
explore and come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, and I definitely heard that idea of, well, we're going to bring folks to schools to see examples, but I also think that it doesn't have to be. You've used a reading to be that sort of data or example or a way of approaching it, and then leading someone through an inquiry process of, well, what do you see here that resonates with your experience or that could be applicable here? Right? What are the other ways in which you can bring examples or experiences to folks other than visiting classrooms or providing readings and videos and those kinds of things?
I really like those.
You like those?
I mean, I think there's no better sell than seeing kids in action. I mean, that's the clincher for most teachers or principals.
Yeah.
Is like kids in action with work and reflecting upon that. So, I mean, for me, I'm kind of biased against that one.
Well, I think there's a component of a lot of these questions are good luck to you all. I mean, because they're so varied and they're in such different places that now you start to see the necessity of some of that individual inquiry journey, right? I mean, we have to be able to acknowledge and see people going different ways, and I think one of the valuable pieces of information as a facilitator, thinking about our group as the group has this common reading around expectations and how important they are, what we communicate about what we value through our expectations, is I'm really going to be looking for what they're noticing and naming as we visit these classrooms or watch a video of a classroom or whatever that experience is, because I think that's what then gives me some of those leverage points of, okay, where are we, what are they seeing, what are they valuing for then planning on moving forward. I don't know if I all answered your question.
I think a lot, like, what I was thinking about too is that a lot of these questions are about creating structures, creating an environment, like things that are behind the scenes a little bit more. So visiting classrooms, definitely, like seeing it in action, seeing it that works, but it's also like interviewing teachers and looking at planning documents and seeing the other, structures that are behind what makes it happen in the classroom.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, to me, a lot of it, how do we create a PBL community? How do we empower teachers? Like, it's more behind the scenes kind of stuff. So yeah.
I wonder if some of that is out of a place of, kind of nervousness and apprehension.
No, I think it totally
And I wonder
is,
how much of that can be explored by talking to kids.
Mm-hmm.
That kids are okay if teachers show up and say, I'm learning here alongside of you, that I think they respond pretty well to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, like teacher panels and student panels and things like that. Because I do think sometimes they are assuming a lot or are scared of how teachers are going to react or kids are going to react and don't know how to want to try to get like everything all set up so that doesn't happen. And it's
Exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. That's the nature.
But I understand like that wanting to be super prepared for it.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance of being prepared and willing to jump?
And also,
right, because that's
just
that's
being
cool.
able to just do it and not have to have like everything perfect before you try.
David, I'm sorry that I gave you a little out-of-body experience where I was asking about a person that was not you. Your question there.
Oh, that was my question?
That was your question, and I was
didn't
like,
even recognize
yeah, no, it's fine. I was like, hang on, that's you.
Was that what
You-
so when you're over there, you're going, I saw that.
It was like, I don't think that's right. So I like the idea of like, how do you bring, and one that how do you bring the experience sort of to the folks that are inquiring? So there is the direct observation of a classroom. There is the direct reading and viewing. What you just identified there is this sort of person-to-person inquiry, where you would literally be asking a teacher, how did you do that? Or a student, what did that feel like? Or those kinds of things, right? Where you're actually doing that inquiry. And then I think the last that we haven't really talked a bunch about is actually providing the professional learning experience that models what you would want to see in the classroom. So if you had teachers or principals going through a PBL experience where they are literally working on a project, then they have that, oh, I remember when we did that and how that felt. And so it's that sort of first person experience. And I think that that's a little bit of what you were doing with the cards, right? Where you were giving them a first person experience. This is what it feels like to be sort of engaged in a culture of thinking, right? Are there any others other than sort of those four of like creating an experience for folks that we would want to call out as, hey, these are options?
Well, let's say what you
Well, I
designing
just
or
said, like,
doing,
what if we had them
doing the work
plan a
of.
project, right? Like, say, here's some resources, here's some planning documents or whatever. Think of a project and go through that process. Because a lot of their questions are about, like, how do you embed the standards? How do you do 21st century skills? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's all there.
Yes.
It's all part of it. But if you've never done it before, you don't know that. You don't know that it just happens.
Yep. So I think looking at what are those opportunities, and some people might need one of those, some people might need all of those, and looking at those as sort of opportunities. Anybody else in terms of like things that you didn't get to that you're not really sure how to get to? Or things that you're really looking forward to hitting in November? So no. I feel like that was decent wait time. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we were looking at is that this site specifically is the collaboration and transparency space for our cohorts. And everyone is doing it a little bit differently, and that's a good thing. I do not want to have it be exactly the same, but I do want to make sure everything is being shared here so that people can see the really deep work. So this particular cohort, the middle school 21st century leaders cohort, they created their own, they sort of looked at what we had here and really took the time to collaborate and create their own space for a lot of the conversations and questions. I think we got to relink this in a different way here. No. And you guys have your folder that allows for additional sharing in personalized learning and Tequity, as well as in the learning spaces one. We've taken pictures and added to the site and really had opportunities to sort of share across all of the different cohorts. So one of the things that I just want to make sure that you're doing is sort of seeing, well, what are other people doing? If you are stuck, if you are thinking, I'm not really sure how to move the needle for these school leaders or really work, please do use the other pages as ways of sort of getting ideas and ways of sort of sharing. To me, there's a big opportunity for that kind of transparency and support. The question that I would love to ask is, what's missing from this space that would allow for more idea sharing and for more transparency across the different cohorts?
First initial thought to that is not only how or what's missing, but when. I just think about, what people have on their plates.
Yes.
And, is it feasible, or do I see them taking the time to go in and look at other cohorts if they're really focused on theirs and running a building? So what's a way to produce like a highlight reel or something along those lines that takes out the time or what feels like maybe an intensive commitment to go through and look at other sites?
Absolutely.
Because I think that does take a bit. So what's a way to get some of these big ideas that are coming out that might start to have some overarching themes in, instead like a highlight reel of sorts? I mean, I don't know what...
Well, I think that speaks to sort of two different things. One is, are there ways in which we can sort of, whether it's myself, or Lori, sort of look across and see, oh, these are the common elements, or this is something that's really amazing that this cohort did, and sharing that story. I also think what you're talking about has a little bit to do with how are we going to celebrate at the end of the year and talk about the things that we learned and share them across. I think that's also going to be really important. Both of those, I think, could have a really nice space within the site. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of agree with John. We created a Slack space for people to maybe potentially come and collaborate, and the feedback that I had, that was created for the first month, and the second month, most of the people signed up for it, but nobody ever went back to it.
Right.
Because it just became one more thing, so distilling it down into something that's usable and user-friendly, easy to understand.
Yep. Well, and I think that idea of, from both of what you were just talking about, of coming back to something and really sort of making it a part of the process, rather than something extra, something that it's like, well, I don't have time to look at the other ones, I just have time to look at mine. But how can we sort of make that easier or help to facilitate that? One thing I did want to touch on was we had sort of made a request that we use the reflection tool at the end of each session, and there were a couple of folks who did, and there were a couple of folks who did not. I think a lot of that, and the feedback that we've gotten thus far, is that there just wasn't time. And so going in and having everybody reflect when we were still having a deep discussion about equity, or when we were still working through what it meant or where we were going to go next time, that it wasn't going to be as easy. And so I wanted to throw out a couple of options. One is essentially asking, how would you rather reflect in that time and space and sort of capture that reflection? Or is there an alternative time and space to actually send out and say, hey, would you fill out the form for reflection? I am fine with either of those options, but I really, especially as we are trying to get better at facilitating these cohorts, we want to make sure that we are reflecting, actively engaged in reflection during the sessions, after the sessions, and such like that. So I wanted to provide a little bit of time to sort of talk through, would it be better to have a different form of reflection? Would it be better to simply send it out as a follow-up? Now, clearly we're not going to get as many people who actually fill out the thing if there is the follow-up email, but at the same time I want to make sure that it's meeting the needs of our cohort participants.
I don't know what, I'm going to blame Garrett.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Garrett didn't do what he's supposed to do, but I think this looks good to me. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at mine.
Yeah. No, this is the thing.
It's the same thing. It's just do it.
Okay.
Do it. I mean, I'm making a note here that we'll make sure that we do, and I'll admonish Garrett for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Great line.
I think just the structure of our meeting was such that we were the ones doing all the typing in
Yeah.
the Google Doc. We used to like capture everything,
Yep.
so we just didn't.
That's a good point.
Cause nobody,
So
nobody
so
else
people
had
didn't
access to
have
this.
their machines out or whatever.
So we had it projected, we were capturing theirs and we were
Yeah.
capturing there. So I think after that, we were just kind of thinking that we were kind of done.
Yeah.
I don't know, just logistically, no one else was really.
And so would it be, in terms of like making it easier, does it make it easier to have a sort of a short link that people can use on their phones to do it? That would be a little bit easier than like, go to this link, click on this thing,
That's a really
then
good point.
fill it
I
out.
didn't even think about that. Like, people probably didn't have computers out.
Right.
Yeah.
No one
In
ever-
in the
Yeah,
in
that's a
the
good point.
Tequity one, we totally did. So let me just tell you.
Really basic question here, but is there a link to the overall like survey for the school leaders' day in general? Is there one sent out about just for feedback on
There
that?
usually is.
Is it because then they're doing two? Is there a way to embed this in there? And this is part of your reflection for the day overall, just rather than going to two different.
I like
ways.
that.
Oh, that's really good.
I'm not even sure if there was one, but I don't remember.
So we have struggled a little bit in terms of getting reflection for the whole day.
Yeah, it's
The-
always reflection in general is always hard.
Right. And so trying to make it that as simple as possible, I like the idea of how do you connect those two together, but also like how do you get really deep reflection for like something that is fairly different, right? Like if I'm giving overall reflection for the whole day, especially now that the day is going to be significantly smaller, like an hour's worth of time potentially, that is just like coming together all together. So looking at ways of reflecting that don't feel overwhelming, that are connected to what you're actually doing in the session versus like, and now we need 15 minutes for you to boot up your computer and go to the link. Yeah, I think that that's really valuable.
And I'm wondering, I mean, in terms of like a flex, I'm just selfishly thinking of our group in general who's going to be, they've actually split up over 2 Fridays, going to be visiting Park Lane.
Yep.
So, yeah, how do we, right, because what if they go on a day that wasn't the morning hour? And so how do we have a document that just applies to what they did at that school that day?
Yeah.
With some flexibility. Right, so I guess what I'm saying is I see a little bit of at least one specific case where having them combined isn't a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and so I think maybe thinking critically about what makes the most sense, right? So especially as we move forward with a lot of school visits and things like that, can we make it as easy as possible for people to reflect? And I think biggest, broadest point is please encourage reflection within your cohorts.
Right, and I think
allow people to take that moment. Go ahead.
We need to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
and I guess that's sort of the train of think I was thinking is it important that it's on this for someone else? Right, because I guess I'm anticipating part of the reflection will happen, I don't know. If it happens in the group, sort of like John was alluding to, they're going to be together in little pockets of principalship together. I anticipate they'll plan for, I took that away, I like that, I'm wondering about that. Then is it important that they log it here?
well, this is for the cohorts themselves, so we're not doing this as a accountability measure.
Okay.
But at the same time, I really like just how personalized that is. What you were just talking about, like how are you encouraging reflection within your participants, and how can they do it for themselves?
Okay.
And so what I'm going to talk with Lori and Hai about is, okay, so if you decide you want to reflect differently than this, because this is not an accountability measure, like
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter
Okay.
to sort of the system.
Okay.
But at the same time, if you don't have another way of reflecting, yeah, just do it. And I think that there's a pretty easy way that we can make it sort of as easy as possible. But if you have a more authentic way of reflecting in the moment and saying, this is what I'm going to do next time, this is, just like we did at the start of this session, right? Where I'm thinking about what are the moves that I made personally, what are the changes that I'd like to make, all those kinds of things.
Okay.
Right, maybe something connected to the observation tool.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
something that
Some
they're going to be
authentic
using
ways, yeah.
while they're there.
So to me, that's really important that you guys have that discussion and say,
Yeah.
oh, and this is how we want to reflect, right? So the last thing, and then it's time for you to plan and to talk through, is I want you to do a little bit of feedback giving to this session. So that's the very last thing that you have to do. If you go back to the slideshow and click on the link, which is on slide 8, it's the very last slide, and I'm going super slow, so it'll take a second. But it should link to a quick form, and as long as you fill that out, I will know that you provided our feedback to our session. And then the rest of the time really is yours for planning. I will be here, obviously, to answer questions and things like that. But please do let us know how you were thinking about this session.